Hey there YouTube, welcome to Showcase Watches. Today bringing you a quick video about travel watches. Today featuring two GMT models, both from Rolex. Now, as many of you know, I have reviewed both these watches in some depth, and I have said in numerous videos that Rolex own the travel watch space, the genre, the GMT function, that is owned by Rolex, without doubt. As many of you know, when it comes to the dive watch, I have argued that there are better alternatives to the Rolex Submariner, mainly being the Omega Seamaster Professional. I have argued that the Omega Seamaster Professional makes the better dive watch. I have also argued that the Tudor can be arguably a better dive watch. Certainly the Tudor Pelagos when it comes to the tool watch, but for bang per buck, I think the Tudor Black Bay range takes some beating. When it comes to the chronograph, again, arguably between the Zenith El Primero, the Omega Speedmaster, and of course the Rolex Daytona. It's open to debate. But when it comes to the GMT function, there is no other brand that make a travel watch like Rolex. And here featured we have the Rolex GMT Batman and the Rolex GMT Pepsi. Of course, it's the vintage, the 1980s 16750 model. And the Batman is the recently discontinued BLNR model. So the reason I'm doing this video is because I've had several emails from people saying that they travel a lot and they're wanting a GMT function watch. What should they buy? Now, as many people know, I am an Omega fan, and I think people expect me to recommend the Planet Ocean GMT function or even the Seamaster GMT function. Now, both of those are fine watches. Both of them are nice watches. I'm not going to slag them off. I like Omega, and I think both of them are fine options. However, if you are looking for a GMT function watch, there is no watch that compares to the Rolex. Whether it be the Rolex GMT Master, the Rolex GMT Master 2, or even the Explorer 2, either 40mm or 42mm version, whichever. Now, what makes a good travel watch? Well, majority of people who are going to be looking for a travel watch are people that are going to be wanting to go on holiday, they're going to be on the beach, they're going to be in the sea, they're going to be swimming, so we're going to want to have some water resistance. Now, all three of the Rolex GMT function watches, whether it be the GMT Master, Master 2, or the Explorer 2, are all 100 metre dive watches, 100 metre water resistance. So they're not quite dive watches, but 100 metres is ample for the majority of swimmers. For swimming in a swimming pool, for snorkeling, they're absolutely fine, and for basic shallow diving, they're absolutely fine. Not many recreational divers will be going below 100 metres, further down than 100 metres. 100 metres is quite a deep depth, so I think 100 metres covers it quite well. The GMTs, both the Master, Master 2 and Explorer 2, are both within that 100 metres, so they're both ample. Another thing you're going to want stainless steel. So when you're travelling, you're going to want stainless steel. When you get into a sandy environment, the sand is naturally going to scratch the watch. If you have a precious metal scratches easier than stainless. So you're going to want something in stainless steel, something that's going to take a bit of a beating. You're going to want something that's going to be comfortable, something that you can wear on a rubber, on a NATO. Obviously, all three watches we're discussing can pull that off. You're going to want, basically what I'm saying is when you come into a travel watch, you're going to want something that's stainless steel sports. There are other travel watches, Patek Philippe and other sort of high-end brands that they make the world time and things like that. That isn't something that I'm recommending people go travelling with. It's not something you'd want to be on a beach or in the sea with, especially when you've got something like a Patek Philippe. That just would not fit the bill. You'd be looking at something in the stainless steel sports model, and hence why I'm saying Rolex is the one to go for. Now, the question is between these two watches. So we've got here the GMT Batman. So the GMT Batman, as we know, is ceramic, stainless steel. It's 904L stainless steel, ceramic bezel. It's got the modern movement. It's got the modern tech. It's a beautiful looking watch. Centre links are obviously polished, so they are a bit of a scratch magnet, but it is essentially a very, very sporty looking tool watch. We have then the GMT Pepsi on the Jubilee. Again, 40mm, stainless steel. This one has actually got the plastic crystal, so it's not a sapphire crystal, and it has got the aluminium bezel. Both of them are bidirectional bezels, which means they go both ways, and they both keep track of, well, this one keeps track of 2 time zones, whereas the GMT Master 2 keeps track of 3 time zones. You can jump the hand on this to keep track of multiple time zones, so it's a really, really useful function. On the Explorer 2, you can only keep track of the 2 time zones. So these 2 watches keep track of 3 time zones. The Explorer 2 keeps track of 2 time zones. And obviously the 3rd time zone is tracked by the rotating bidirectional bezel. Between these 2 watches, I personally would take the Batman with me. The Jubilee bracelet is a little bit more dressier, so it can be worn with shorts and a t-shirt. It can be pulled off absolutely fine, but between the 2 watches, I would personally take the Batman, only because it's the more modern watch. Obviously all the seals, the water resistance and everything I know is there. The Pepsi GMT, it is vintage. It has had a recent service, so I have no doubt that the water resistance is absolutely fine. But with it being a vintage piece, I wouldn't really want to hammer that about. I wouldn't really want to get it, rough and tumble and sand and grit and things in it, whereas the Batman is more fit for purpose. So I'm saying that the modern ceramic stainless steel Rolex GMT Master 2 is the watch to travel with. Now, you can argue, why wouldn't I say the Explorer 2? Now, simply because the Explorer 2 is not a watch that's ever floated my boat, particularly. If I was going to go for the Explorer, I'd go for the Explorer 1. The Explorer 2 is a beautiful watch, but the GMT just does it better for me. I like having a rotating bezel. I like the proportions better. I just think the GMT Master 2 Batman is a beautiful, beautiful watch. Absolutely stunning watch. It is a little bit of an attraction. If it's on your wrist, and depending on what country you're going to, if this is on your wrist, it can attract a little bit of unwanted attention, so you've got to be a little bit careful of that. Arguably, the Tudor Black Bay GMT would be a perfect watch. It is cheaper, it's less iconic, less noticeable to the general public, and it's arguably a better travel watch. But I'm a big believer in trying to build relationships, build memories with a watch, and I would personally much prefer to build a relationship with this watch than a Tudor GMT. That's just personal preference, though. That is just personal preference. You can't go wrong. Rolex make the best time zone function watch. When you're tracking time zones, buy a Rolex all day long. The Tudor I would put as a very, very admirable second place. I'd give the Tudor a definite mention, especially at the price point, £3,000 as opposed to the GMT models, which are over £7,000 if you can get them at retail. Quite often with these models you're paying grey market prices, which is significantly higher. Everything you'd want in a travel watch is in this package. It is a little bit flashier, it is a little bit more noticeable on the wrist, but if that doesn't bother you and your watch is well insured, don't worry about it. Just wear it and enjoy it. It's something that it's built for purpose. These watches were built to go abroad. They were built to track time zones. They were built for the pilots. I mean, the GMT Pepsi probably picks up more on the heritage than any of the watches. These were built for Pan America Airways pilots back in the 1950s and 60s. This watch was built to track multiple time zones. It was built for purpose. And that's why the GMT watches have always been a little bit more dressier. They weren't designed to be a tool watch in the same sense as let's bring it into shot. They weren't built to be tool watches in the same sense as the Submariner. The Submariner was built to be a tool watch. It was built to be on the wrist when you go diving. It was built to take a hammering, hence why it's a little bit more tool watch aesthetic, whereas the GMTs have always been a little bit more dressier because they were built to be worn in the cockpit of the plane. They weren't designed to be hammered in the same way as the Submariner was. But I believe the Batman, or the black, or the modern Pepsi, or whichever modern GMT watch you go for, as long as it's stainless steel, I think is a perfect GMT function watch. The only reason I state stainless steel is because precious metals is softer, and it is a bit more open to scratches and abuse, especially if you're on a sandy beach. And if you're on a sandy beach, you've let's just say for instance you've been on a sandy beach, you've got some sand in between the links, you've got some sand in between the bezel, or you've whatever it may be. When you try and clean that stuff off, it's going to scratch. It's going to act like sandpaper, and the stainless steel watch is the better option, without a doubt. But that's not to say that something like a GMT Root Beer isn't a cool option. It is a beautiful watch, and if you like a watch that gets patina, then certainly it's a definite option. The Explorer 2 just doesn't do it for me personally. It is definitely a watch to consider. You can argue that the Explorer 2 perfectly straddles the tool watch and the GMT function, because it's got the tool aesthetic. It's got the GMT function, but it's got the tool aesthetic of the Submariner. So you can argue that the Explorer 2 is the perfect watch for travelling. Just for me personally, I'd be going for a GMT Master 2. If we were talking back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, definitely we're talking about the GMT Master. But as soon as we're talking 2020, I'd be going GMT Master 2 all day long. And when I talk about this, I talk about every single GMT function watch on today's modern market. I cannot think of a better watch that I would want on my wrist if I was taking a trip abroad. It is the ultimate travel watch, in my opinion. The biggest downside of it is they're not cheap, and they are a little bit easy recognisable, and they may attract some unwanted attention depending on what country you're going to. That would be the downside. But if your watch is well insured and you are confronted to a position where you've got to give up your watch, or some violence is going to take place, give up your watch. If you carry insurance, give up your watch. Your watch is not worth as much as your personal well-being, health, or life. So yeah, that would be my recommendation. Sorry, should have done a quick wristwatch check at the beginning. So I'm wearing the Omega Seamaster. This is the 1957 trilogy. This is the reissue. 1957 Omega Seamaster 300. Beautiful watch. A beautiful dive watch and period piece. So let me know what you guys think. Which watch would you guys travel with? Which would be your perfect travel companion? I know loads of people who would travel on the plane on the GMT with the GMT function. They've got the GMT watch with them, but they will also carry with them their dive watch. They will carry with them the Rolex Submariner when they're travelling. Me personally, I wouldn't take multiple watches with me. I would just take one. So if I was to spend 2 weeks on holiday with one timepiece, I would be taking my Rolex GMT Batman all day long. It would be very difficult to leave the GMT Master Pepsi at home. It really would. But this is a vintage piece. And if I start doing damage to this watch, if I start beating this watch up or doing anything untoward to the watch, taking chunks out of it, if I did go diving, or if I went sailing, whenever I go on holiday, I like to rent a sailboat and go sailing, and you start taking chunks out of this thing and having to have it polished and things, you're really sort of damaging the value of the watch and the collectability of the watch. And especially with a plastic acrylic crystal, as soon as you start putting gouges across this thing, you're affecting its originality. It would be very, very difficult to repair. If you had to send this watch in for repair, especially if you send it to Rolex, it'd come back with a load of replacement parts, and it straight away takes away the collectability and the desirability of the watch. So this is one that I keep for special occasions. If I'm going out for a meal, if I'm doing something which I know the watch isn't at danger, I will wear this watch. But if I'm wearing the watch for use abroad, on a beach, whatever it may be, I'll take this. I'll take the Batman, because at the end of the day, if I smash the sapphire crystal on this, if I smash the bezel, if I take chunks out of the links, if I start damaging the watch in any way and have to have it repaired, it's not taking away from the originality of the watch, particularly because this is a modern watch. It's still a modern watch. It doesn't really matter in the same way as it does with the 16750 GMT Master. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Which watch would you be taking if you were going abroad? I would personally pick the Rolex GMT Batman. I would give an honourable mention to the Tudor GMT Pepsi, or Diet Pepsi. I believe that is a fantastic travel watch and arguably the better watch to take abroad than the Rolex because it's not as recognisable, it is cheaper, it is something you can hammer about a little bit more, and it is 200 metres water resistance. But all that said, the Rolex is the better build quality. It's beautiful. It's a thing of beauty. This watch excites me. The Tudor GMT Pepsi or Diet Pepsi just doesn't excite me in the same way as what this watch does. And I would much rather build a relationship and build memories with this watch than I would a GMT from Tudor. But Tudor is definitely an honourable mention, and anyone looking, Tudor would be my second choice. I would say the Rolex GMT Master 2 would be my first choice, the Tudor Diet Pepsi would be my second choice, and my third choice would be the Rolex Explorer 2. And then after that, I would then go down the line of Seamaster, GMT, Planet Ocean GMTs, and so on and so forth. So I hope this has answered a question that a few people have been writing in about. I think now that COVID-19 is easing a little bit and travel is getting a bit more accessible, people are starting to think about these things, and they are asking, what watch would you recommend for travelling? And my answer to that is, if you can afford it, go for a Rolex GMT, whether it be the Jubilee or whether it be the Pepsi Jubilee, the Batgirl, the Batman on Oyster, the Black on Oyster. They're all super cool watches, and I would recommend any of them. So thank you for watching. Check out my other videos. All these watches have been reviewed in some depth. And yeah, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, check out my other vids, and leave a comment and let me know what you guys think. Thank you for watching. This is Showcase Watches.